Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Hava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivadadhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivadadhari Yashodanandanam Vrajajandaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajandaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivadadhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivadadhari Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Stotaras Shishimada by Charanara Vinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Stotaras Shishimada Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Anantakulti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Zagaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Garadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Navadip Dham Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Jamuna Devi Ganga Devi Ki Jai. Samveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glorious to the simple devotees. All glorious to the simple devotees. All glorious to the simple devotees. Gaur Premanande Haribo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Before we start, if you're sitting in the back and you'd like to move closer, there's a few other seats here, and the more you can fill in the seats and come closer, the more the atmosphere will improve because of your association. At least the more my life will improve by having it closer. That feels different, doesn't it? It's better. Thank you very much.
It's like a family.
No, it is a family. And then there's room for 1,000 more people to come afterwards. We welcome everyone this morning. Thank you for coming in today, even though all day long you worked very hard, for days actually, getting ready, for weeks. And then going out for the yajna yesterday, downtown San Francisco, for Black Friday. Hopefully we brightened everyone's Black Friday a little bit, and gave them the opportunity to come in contact with the holy names, Bhagavad Gita, Krishna Prasadam, which is the greatest service. And then despite that fact, you got up early this morning and came all the way here. We thank everyone who's joined us online this morning from all over the world for this broadcast, where we intend to continue reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam and discussing the topics of Sri Krishna, which we are assured in the Shastras will alleviate all illusion, fear, doubt, and give us complete happiness simply by their discussion. And today I'm going to read a few verses and discuss them with all of you from the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the crown on Lord Krishna's head in the scheme of the deity, as the Srimad Bhagavatam is the deity of Lord Krishna. And I think that you'll, when you hear these verses, you'll see why I picked them out, and you'll also feel great ecstasy in your heart. Please restrain yourselves from dancing or rolling on the floor or making gurgling noises or whatever kinds of ecstasy you go into when you hear these verses. But the first one I'm going to read to you is from the 11th canto, 2nd chapter, text number 6. That's 11.2.6. Bhajanti ye yatha devan Deva api tathaivatan Chayeva karmas sachivaha Sadhavo dina vatsalaha Bhajanti, worship, yea, they who, yatha, In which way? Devan, the demigods. Devaha, the demigods. Api, also. Tataeva, just in that way. Tan, them. Chaya, in a shadow. Iva, as if. Karma, of material work and its reactions. Sachivaha, the attendants. Sadhavaha, saintly persons. Dinavatsalaha, merciful to the fallen. Translation. Those who worship the demigods receive reciprocation from the demigods in a way just corresponding the offering. The demigods are attendants of karma, like a person's shadow, but sadhus are actually merciful to the fallen. Please repeat. Those who worship the demigods receive reciprocation from the demigods in a way just corresponding to the offering. The demigods are attendants of karma, like a person's shadow, but sadhus are actually merciful to the fallen. Now all say, then you say. Those who worship the demigods receive reciprocation from the demigods in a way just corresponding the offering. The demigods are attendants of karma, like a person's shadow, but sadhus are actually merciful to the fallen. Purport. The words Chaiva karma sachiva are significant here. Chaya means shadow. The shadow of the body precisely follows the movements of the body. The shadow has no power to move in a way different from the movement of the body. Similarly, as stated here, Bhajanti ye yata devan, deva api tataivatan. The results the demigods reward to living beings correspond exactly to the living being's actions. The demigods are empowered by the Lord to follow precisely the particular karma of a living entity in awarding him happiness and distress, just as a shadow cannot move independently. The demigods cannot punish or reward a living being independently, although the demigods are millions of times more powerful than the human beings on earth. They are ultimately tiny servants of God, whom the Lord allows to play as the controllers of the universe. In the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Prithu Maharaj, an empowered incarnation of the Lord, states that even the demigods are subject to punishment by the Lord if they deviate from his laws. On the other hand, devotees of the Lord, such as Narada Muni, by their potent preaching, can interfere in the karma of a living being by persuading him to give up his fruit of activity and mental speculation and surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In material existence, one works hard under the bondage of ignorance. In the material world, one works hard under the bondage of ignorance. But if one becomes enlightened by association with a pure devotee of the Lord, one can understand one's actual position as an eternal servant of God. By rendering such service, one dissolves his attachment to the material world and the reactions of his previous activities. And as a surrendered soul, he is endowed with unlimited spiritual freedom in the service of the Lord. In this regard, the Brahma Samhita 554 states, Yaswindragopa matavendra mohosa karma bandhanurupa palabhajanam atanoti karmani nirdahati kintu chapakti bhajam govindamari purusham tamaham bhajami. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, who burns to their root all the fruit of activities of those imbued with devotion. For those who walk the path of work, no less for Indra, king of the demigods, than for the tiny insect Indragopa, he impartially ordains the due enjoyments of the fruits of activities in accordance with the chain of works previously performed. Even the demigods are bound to the laws of karma, whereas a pure devotee of the Lord, having completely given up the desire for material enjoyment, successfully burns to ashes all traces of karma. In this regard, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has commented that unless one is engaged as a surrendered soul in the devotional service of the Lord, he cannot actually be considered nishkama, or free from all personal desire. Sometimes a materialistic person will engage in charity or altruistic activities and in this way consider himself a selfless worker. Similarly, those engaged in mental speculation with the ultimate goal of merging into the impersonal Brahman aspect of the Lord also advertise themselves as being selfless or desireless. According to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, however, such karmis and jnanis, while busy in their so-called selflessness, are in fact servants of lusty desires. In other words, they have not perfectly understood their position as eternal servants of God. The altruistic karmi falsely considers himself the best friend of humanity, although he is unable to give actual benefit to others because he is ignorant of the eternal life of bliss and knowledge, beyond the temporary hallucination of material existence. Similarly, although the jnani proudly declares himself God and invites others to become God also, he neglects to explain how the so-called gods have come to be bound by the laws of material nature. Actually, the attempt to become God is based not on love of God, but on the desire to take the same status as God. In other words, the desire to be equal in all respects to the Supreme is simply another materialistic desire. Therefore, the karmis and jnanis, because of their dissatisfaction in artificially trying to fulfill their own desires, can show no actual mercy to the fallen souls. Therefore, the karmis and jnanis, because of their dissatisfaction in artificially trying to fulfill their own desires, can show no actual mercy to the fallen souls. In this regard, Sri Madhavacharya has quoted the Uddama Samhita. Which Samhita? Correct. Sukham icchanti bhutanam prayo dukkha sahandranam tatapi tebya parvara deva eva hare priyaha. Deva eva. Rishis want happiness, for all beings are almost always incapable of tolerating the unhappiness of men. Nevertheless, the demigods are superior because they are very dear to Lord Hari. Unquote. But although Srila Madhvacharya has placed the demigods in a higher position than the merciful rishis, Srila Jiva Goswami has stated, Sadhavas tu na karmanugataha. The sadhus are actually better than the demigods because the sadhus are merciful regardless of the pious or impious acts of the conditioned souls. This apparent disagreement between Madhvacharya and Jiva Goswami is resolved by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who points out that in the statement by Srila Madhvacharya, the word rishi or sage indicates the so-called sadhus or saintly persons among the karmis and jnanis. Ordinary fruitive workers and speculative philosophers certainly consider themselves to be at the summit of pious morality and altruism. However, since they are ignorant of the supreme position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they cannot be considered equal to the demigods, who are all devotees of the Lord and aware that all living beings are eternal servants of the Lord. Even such demigods, however, cannot be compared to the pure devotees such as Narada. Such pure devotees are empowered to award the highest perfection of life to both pious and impious living beings, who have only to follow the orders of such pure devotees. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This verse is being spoken by Vasudeva because in the beginning of this chapter, Vasudeva approaches Sri Narada Muni and tells him that although he gave birth, his wife gave birth to Krishna, Krishna was born into his family, he didn't take the time to inquire about self-realization. And therefore now he is asking Narada Muni, the devotee of the Lord, to please give him the knowledge of self-realization so that he can become perfect in life. And in the preamble, and as he's asking, as he's approaching his spiritual master, Narada Muni, he's speaking some of these points to frame the conversation. And he's appreciating Narada Muni's position as the servitor of the Lord, who is merciful to all living entities. He travels everywhere and gives Krishna consciousness. And this verse particularly points out that there's a way in which the demigods, although great servitors of the Lord, are simply like those who mind a prison. Their duty is to give living entities exactly what they deserve. This is justice. But the devotees of the Lord actually go beyond that. They, as the word is used in the purport here, interfere with the life of the living entity in this material world who's happily going on in the prison life, conditioned by life imprisoned in prison. Prisoner forgets sometimes that he or she is actually incarcerated. And Prabhupada points out that this world is constructed in such a way that people forget entirely that they're in prison. And they feel that I'm fine. They don't even see the bars. At least a prisoner sees the bars and the door slams closed and so forth. But people in this world think, I'm fine and I'm free. Just coming back from India recently and going through the various processes that it takes to be transported from one place to another reminded me of another experience I had several weeks before I went to India, which was going to a prison in Arizona, where I had to go through similar scrutiny. At every step, I had to be checked to see if I was carrying any metal objects, and then I had to go through intense screening at every point, looking at my ID, rechecking my ID, making sure they had the proper paperwork to come in the prison. And going from New Delhi to San Francisco was very similar. I was trying to remember how many checkpoints I went through, just in the New Delhi airport, at least 3 times. And at the front door, before you even walk in the airport, they look at your paper. For a long time, I was thinking, there's one name to check. How long does it take? And then going inside, going to the ticket counter, then going through security, immigration, security, then security again. And then, as if that wasn't enough, right before you get on the airplane, there's another person standing right at the door and wants to check you one more time. And I was amazed at this inordinate amount of checking. And then I was thinking how prison-like that was. Everyone wants to know what you are, what you're up to, who you are you in the right place, and so forth. And the material world is very much regulated like that. And that's the job of the demigods. There's also in this verse an indication that demigods supply to human beings their necessities, or they punish them according to their sinful activities by withholding the heat, by giving too much rain and so forth. There are ways in which everyone is living according to the law of the material world, which is inexorable. And this is the job of the demigods. But the devotees of the Lord are being declared in this verse, particularly this relates to this service we've been deputized for by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and specifically engaged in by Srila Prabhupada, to give mercy to living entities everywhere by distributing Krishna consciousness. And this, in effect, interferes with people's hallucinatory and very much imprisoned life in this material world. So when somebody comes in contact with Krishna consciousness, they get an opportunity to begin their transcendental life. Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaitan pramapuyaya kalpate. And the service rendered to Krishna takes one above the normal course of activities in the material world, which are regulated by the three modes of material nature. By devotional service, by some seva, one is able to rise above that. And very quickly also, in the Gita, Krishna talks about how quickly transcendental knowledge acts upon the living entity. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Devahuti speaks about how immediately the holy name acts upon a living entity. Just by repeating one time, by the tip of the tongue, the holy name, Hare Krishna, immediately one becomes changed by the touch of the transcendental energy. So those who have the good fortune of going out into the public to meet people and give them the opportunity to take Krishna consciousness will feel a reciprocation from the Supreme Personality of Godhead within their hearts as they do so, and will also get knowledge and be able to see how the spiritual energy coming from the Sankirtan movement and being distributed to people who are wandering here and there in this material world will be able to see for themselves how it's acting. And by that, one gets a higher taste. The higher taste means one's discrimination becomes very refined, and one gravitates towards hearing and chanting over letting the senses do whatever they want, or pursuing any kind of adjustment in the material world that seems to indicate that one would become happy. And only coming to this point, this verse and purport point out, constitutes real happiness and peace. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur commented, as we heard, that the devotees are the only ones who are really happy. And of course, there's a famous verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that says that the devotees have no desire. They're nishkam, because they've aligned their desire with Krishna's desire, and therefore they're called nishkam. It's not that we have no desire, we have eternal desire. As Krishna indicates in the 3rd chapter of the Gita, Nahi kashchit shanamapi jatu tishchatya karma krit karyate hyavasha karma sarva prakriti jayar gunai. No one can refrain from activity even for a moment. However, when that desire and activity is aligned with Krishna, one becomes submissive to Krishna's desire. That's liberation. And the devotees easily attain that by aligning themselves with the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's a missionary activity. Prabhupada was in apparent seclusion for 10 years. Actually, he wasn't. He was in Vrindavan preparing himself to spread Lord Chaitanya's mission. While he was doing that, he was getting his books ready. And of course, he was hearing and chanting, because that's a constant in the life of a devotee. This is what keeps one connected to Krishna all the time. But that must also be accompanied by a preparation to spread the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And that's what Srila Prabhupada was doing in Vrindavan. The mood and attitude that Srila Prabhupada had in Vrindavan was very different than many sadhus. Many sadhus have the idea, I'll go to Vrindavan, I'll stay in Vrindavan, I'll complete my bhajan, I'll leave my body and go back to Godhead. Srila Prabhupada's mood was, I'll live in Vrindavan, I'll get ready, I'll go out of Vrindavan, across the ocean, which is forbidden, and I will go wherever it takes to distribute the name of Krishna and the Srimad Bhagavatam to as many people as possible so they can go back home, back to Godhead. This is the superior position of the devotees who are aligned with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that they don't only think of themselves, but they're thinking how to give Krishna consciousness to all others. It's very much in the mood of Prahlad Maharaj. You can see from his prayers in the 7th canto, 9th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where he says, I don't want to go to the forest, I don't want to go to the mountains, but I want to live in the cities, along with all the other people who are just crazy. They are wild and crazy. We saw that yesterday when we were downtown. You can stand in the midst of a river of people coming down the street, and practically nobody's serious about spiritual life. Everybody's doing some whimsical, crazy thing. I met so many people yesterday, and everyone's under the spell of material energy. They all think, I'm part of such and such a family, I'm an American, I'm Chinese. This is insanity. They're actually part and parcel of Krishna. Their only happiness is to be aligned in devotional service with Krishna, but they're seeking all kinds of alternative happiness in this material world, which is really only suffering, and this is insanity. But in Kali Yuga, and especially in Kali Yuga in San Francisco, the insanity is acute. So it's a great honor to follow in the footsteps of Prahlad Maharaj, to come into the city. That's why the devotees like to do it. And you have to put up with all kinds of resistance. That's how one becomes strong in Krishna consciousness. Just standing there yesterday, trying to make contact with other souls in the middle of it. You're just trying to figure, Krishna, empower me, show me how to bring somebody in. There were so many different reactions. Some people actually came over. Although I could see it was hard for them because they're being carried along by some kind of energy. When you're on the street, everyone's walking a certain direction. You know, come over here. You know, it's like, here, come on, stop for a minute. Let's have a conscious relationship. And people are, I have to go. It's like, where are you going? I have no idea, but I'm being pulled along. There's a pull in the material world from the 3 modes of material nature, and you can feel it palpably when you're there, trying to give people Krishna consciousness. I had some people that were open-hearted and very warm and gracious and full of gratitude. And I had other people, one lady was walking by, and she said, I'm not going to touch you. Why would I touch you? Get away from me. and you know, somebody else yelled at me some expletives, you know, as I was walking by. Maybe he was half crazed or something, but just the different modes that people are in come out when you come in contact with them. And that's the duty of the devotees, to go around the world, just like Narada Muni. That's why Vasudeva is praising him. He's saying, you go everywhere, and you try to interfere in the lives of the people of this material world. You don't have any desire. Your main activity is simply spreading Krishna consciousness on behalf of Krishna. Therefore, you're in the superior position. So this is available to everybody in Lord Chaitanya's movement, to come to this stage very quickly of being in the category of Narada Muni. Not that we become Narada Muni, but one who becomes the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant of Narada Muni is honored as much as Narada Muni. In fact, it's almost in some ways more ingratiating to see those who are struggling in the material world, who are still half entangled in the material world, but who are trying to follow Narada Muni. How much Krishna appreciates those devotees. He says in the Bhagavad Gita, Api chet sudaracharo bhajate mam ananya bhak. Krishna says so emphatically that these devotees who are properly aligned, even though they may still be worldly in some ways, these are sadhus. Krishna counts them like that. He said, these are sadhus. They're connected in the right way. And when we go out and we connect others, Krishna somehow miraculously, by his extreme mercy, because he is known as the ocean of mercy, right? Hey Krishna, Karuna Sindhu, Dina Bandho Jagat, and the friend of the most fallen. So when we contact these other people and reach out to them, Bhagavad Gita, holy name, Krishna Prasad, making contact, and they do some little service, whatever they can do, whatever we can extract from them, a little service we can beg from them to do, and they do it, they also become considered like that. That's an eternal consideration now, that they entered into that realm of connection. They've become connected somehow or other to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, having said that, I want to read just a couple of verses from the Chaitanya Charitamrita in which the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is being described in spreading Krishna consciousness with the Panchatattva. And you'll see that it's in the same mood that we're emulating in this ISKCON of Silicon Valley, by organizing our activities and lives around going out to spread Krishna consciousness. So this is from the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, chapter 7, Lord Chaitanya in 5 features, and I'm going to take it up at text number 20 through 21. But before I do, let's hear some reflections. Anything you've heard so far that's stuck in your mind?
Hare Krishna. Guru Maharaj, first of all, we'd like to welcome you back. It's like rainfall coming back. And thank you so much. You had landed pretty close to the Black Friday date, but still you came there and spent so much time. And for me especially, I watched you after a long time distributing books and saw some of the tips. And one of the things that Mukharvinda was noticing, that you don't give away books just to anybody and everybody. You really give it to those who show a keen interest. So sometimes, I look at a target, so many books to distribute, so I might just give it, But you were very careful about that, and if a person said that I don't like to read, you were very particular about giving him a smaller book and not just handing the Bhagavad Gita, so that was very impressive. About this verse, I just wanted to add that in Bhagavad Gita, there's a verse in the 3rd chapter where it talks about the ignorant who are entwined in the modes of material nature, and then the Lord says you should just let them be and not go there. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, but the devotees are so magnanimous that they still go out of the way and try to revive even these souls there.
Because they know the purpose of the Lord.
Of that.
Yeah. Krishna remains neutral in order to honor the free will of the living entity. But the devotees know that Krishna wants the living entities to come back home, back to Godhead. Even he's frustrated in some ways. The living entities have come to this material world, given up their real interest. And when the devotees go out of their way to try to save those souls, then it's particularly an endearing activity to Krishna. Gandharvika?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I was just thinking how this material body has so much disease, and even to diagnose, it costs so much to the equipments and everything like that, and it's the big health industry. But the subtle body is more than that, and the consciousness is polluted. How much more difficult it is to find the contamination at that level. But Krishna has kindly expressing himself through these merciful sadhus who just detect the disease at a very early age, and they are trying to get us out of all the problems. So there is no wonder they are the real saviors, and the topmost welfare activity that they perform, because they remove the deep-rooted diseases. And one more question that I had was like, how come, because Bhagavatam itself says that the sadhus are more powerful than demigods, why would Madhvacharya put it like that?
It was explained. He meant it in reference to the sadhus or rishis who were actually not real sadhus and rishis, but those who were aligned with karmis and gyanis. The real sadhus and rishis are those who are the bhaktas. That's how he he meant it.
Yeah. One more question is, sometimes if a soul is surrendered to the sadhu, they may even go against the rules of the demigods because the purpose is higher. But they are criticized because it's not within the realm of what the rules and regulations put by the demigods. So then the devotee becomes very morose because whole population says that what they do is wrong. But then how does one come above that situation and be steady in his service? Like how Prabhupada gave Gayatri to women, but some people say that it should not be like that. So sometimes in one's own life, we may have to do some things that the relatives don't want you to do, and you're being criticized for that, but then you become morose. So...
Well, if you have to understand clearly, that's why we take instruction from Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita and elsewhere, what your duty is, what your ultimate duty is. Those who know exactly and precisely what they're supposed to do will actually not become morose because they're following what Krishna says. And when you have faith in that, you understand it, whatever the consequences are, become purifying. The ultimate instruction Krishna gives in the Bhagavad Gita, after giving so many instructions, is Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mam Ekam Sharanam Braja Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Mokshayishami Masuchaha. Just surrender to me and don't worry about it. About all these other things. Masuchaha, don't worry about it. Just surrender unto me. And the Bhagavatam says, Devarshi Bhutapnandranam Pitranam Nakinkaro Nayam Ranicha Rajan Sarvatmana Ya Sharanam Sharanyam Kato Mukundam Parihritakartam. That if you surrender to Krishna, you're not a debtor anymore to all these demigods and everybody else. You owe everybody. Everybody owns you when you come into this world and wants a piece of you. But if you completely surrender to Krishna, they can't touch you. You're exempted. And you'll know it too. And Krishna will make it clear that devotees who engage in devotional service and they've given their allegiance to Krishna are no longer indebted to all these other causes and personalities. And in the beginning, if somebody feels morose because of the apparent conflict, then Krishna will come and rescue that person. There's always some kind of conflict in this world. Getting oneself extricated takes a good legal team. It's like legal implications are very difficult, or dental procedures as well. They'll say, you want a root canal or extract the tooth altogether? This one will cost you $2,000, the other one will cost you $7,000, but when we get halfway through, we may change our mind and you might have to have it extracted, but then you're going to have to pay half of the other one. And I mean, there's nothing so simple in this world. But the one thing that is simple is that if you align yourself with Krishna and you go through whatever you have to go through, while you're doing that, to get yourself out, you'll be okay. Because even after you surrender to Krishna, there's going to be a lot of explaining to do. And there's going to be some maneuvering as well, to say the least. But in your heart, once you've given up and you surrender, then you're liberated. Mukta hitva yata rupam swarupena vyavastiti. Your swarup is that you're an eternal servant of Krishna. That's it. Now, whether you've realized your exact rasa with Krishna or not, it doesn't matter. If you've decided already that I'm surrendering to Krishna, and that's it, and it's final, that conviction in your heart will insulate you from the various kinds of complexities of this material world. Narayanak parak sarvena kutaschana bibhyati swarga pavarga narakeshu apitulyar yarta darshinaha. For the devotee who has surrendered to Krishna and who's Narayana Parayana, it means there's nothing else, there's no other goal for me than Narayan. Doesn't matter where you send me after that. Put me in heaven or hell, because my main duty is to surrender to Krishna anyway. And is unaffected by the external circumstances. So that's the advice of Srimad Bhagavatam from the very beginning, and we should take it. It says, completely surrender to Krishna. Give up any kind of motivation, even in your devotional service. Don't approach God for anything except for service. And then you'll be happy. That's such clear advice. And it saves you from everything. And it doesn't matter what situation you're in now. If you adopt that in your heart, then you won't be affected by the other things. Even the gopis in Krishna's Leela in Bhoma Vrindavan, many of them were ridiculed, harassed, held back when they tried to go. But even the ones that were held back became more purified than any of them. Because they were held back, the intensity of their desire increased so much, it burned up any last vestiges of connection to the material world that they had. You can't lose if you surrender. Nirakula.
The last sentence of the purport, such pure devotees are empowered to award the highest perfection of life to both pious and impious living beings who have only to follow the orders of such pure devotees. That really struck me, that pious or impious, pure devotees have that, Shakti have that power to bring everyone back to home, back to Godhead, and we just have to follow their instructions.
Yeah, it's very important how one aligns oneself. If you are aligned in such a way, if you align yourself with a pure devotee and say, I'm going to follow, there may be various contradictions that come up in your life, but if you just say, okay, but this is the center I pull back to, is the instruction of the pure devotee and the alignment under a pure devotee, then you're saved. It's so potent, being aligned properly, and so important. And Prabhupada exhibited that in his life also. He took the order of his spiritual master and said, this is what I'm going to do. And he held on to that and cultivated it throughout his life. And because of that, he always would recount how he was successful. In fact, just this morning I was listening to a lecture Prabhupada was giving and he said, I don't do magic. And he said, I am not a very wonderful person either. He says, people say, you have done a wonderful thing. He said, I am not wonderful, nor can I do magic. He said, I simply followed the order of my spiritual master. He aligned himself. And he inquired from his spiritual master, what should I do? He didn't get a lot of instruction. He just got some. That's all you need. And his guru told him, preach. Go out and preach. So he adopted that mood. Then he asked him, how should I preach? He said, in Radhakund. We walk through that area oftentimes and we think, well, Prabhupada walked here and he got this instruction. He asked his spiritual master while he was there, how should I preach? He said, if you ever get money, print books. So that's why Prabhupada stuck to the books. He just started in a simple way. A profound thing happened while we were in Vrindavan. I went to a class given by Garga Muni Prabhu, one of Prabhupada's very early disciples who did so much to help him get started. He's the one who gave Prabhupada a dictaphone, and he also found the 2 mimeograph machines that were used to print the first Back to Godhead magazine, and many other things. Such a great soul. His brother was Brahmananda, who recently passed away. So in the beginning of the class, and we were sitting in Prabhupada's room in Vrindavan, and in the darshan room, there are glass cases that have all the Prabhupada's books in all different languages. And Gargamuni had preserved in a plastic casing, which he pulled out, one of the newspapers that Prabhupada produced when he was in New Delhi by himself. Simple 4-page newspaper about Krishna consciousness. And he held it up and he said, this is the first thing Prabhupada produced. Looked very simple. And he said, how do you get from this to all this? And he pointed to the room. And they're like, wow. And within such a short amount of time, how do you get from this to that? And the secret was that he just stuck to it. And he stuck to what? He stuck to the order his guru gave him. If you ever get money, print books. So he did that, and it came out. And no matter what your service is, if you take it upon yourself to stick to it, hold to it, then you become a great soul. The internal potency is there within the instruction that comes down through the authorized disciplic succession. And if you take it and you follow it and don't concoct, don't become independent, become dependent rather on sadhu, shastra, and guru. Become dependent and live your life like that, then you'll be empowered to go through all the various complexities of life. And not only that, you'll see it for yourself, how you're being taken care of by Krishna. Krishna says in the Gita, Ananyas chintayantomam yejana pariyupasate tesham nityabdyukdanam yogakshemam bahamyaham. What a verse. I mean, doesn't it make your heart melt when you hear that verse that Krishna says, if you just think of me, follow me, just absorb yourself in me with no other care, I'll personally take care of you. And as one surrenders more and more to the instruction that Krishna gives and takes it through the authorized channel, the more one will realize in one's life how Krishna is taking care of him or her. Personally taking care. Such a nice thing. Now I'm going to read from this Chaitanya Charitamrita because this is nectar and this is camphor, as we just read. We finished the Adi Lila and the Madhya Lila while we were in Govardhan Hill. We read an average of 204 pages every day. And it took 5 hours a day to do that. And the devotees were just hearing and a little bit of discussion, but we also saw that there's so many hidden gems in Prabhupada's books. And one of the main problems I can discern in life is people don't read Prabhupada's books. Okay, I don't read Prabhupada's books enough, and it can become a problem. Because then I start hearing so many other things from the environment, and my mind becomes confused. But if you simply read the founder Acharya's books and listen to what he says, you'll imbibe his mood and you'll understand what he was saying. And then there's a possibility of following it and taking up the tenets of his instructions. And then your life can become perfect. Here is from Adi Lila 7:20 through 21. Shi pancha tattva mili prithvi aisha purva prema bhanda rera mudra ughadiya. Panche mili lute prema kari ashvadhan jata jata piye trishna bhadi anukshan. The characteristics of Krishna are understood to be a storehouse of transcendental love. Although that storehouse of love certainly came with Krishna when he was present, it was sealed. But when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came with his associates of the Panchatattva, they broke the seal and plundered the storehouse to taste transcendental love of Krishna. The more they tasted it, the more their thirst for it grew. Purport: Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was called Mahavaranyaya Avatar, because although he is Sri Krishna himself, he is even more favorably disposed to the poor fallen souls than Lord Sri Krishna. When Lord Sri Krishna himself was personally present, he demanded that everyone surrender unto him and promised that he would then give one all protection. But when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to this earth with his associates, he simply distributed transcendental love of God without discrimination. Sound familiar? Sri Rupa Goswami, therefore, could understand that Lord Chaitanya was none other than Sri Krishna himself, for no one but the Supreme Personality of Godhead can distribute confidential love of the Supreme Person. So when he came as a devotee, he was in this category. The devotees know the purpose of the Lord and they go out and distribute it. Although he's Krishna himself, he assumed the role of a devotee. And the role of the devotee is to give Krishna consciousness to others. So what a nice combination in the age of Kali. Krishna comes himself, but he's a devotee. And he's more merciful than Krishna. And from this verse also, we can very much appreciate the method in which he distributed. The members of the Panchatattva, lute, interesting word in Bengali. There's a word in English, loot. When people, sometimes there's social unrest and crowds of people come out in the street and to demonstrate their frustrations, they smash in windows. Have you seen this? They smash in windows and then they go carry away everything that's in the store. You've seen it? They call it looting. And in the Bengali here it's called lute. And it's translated as plundering. It's the same word. But imagine the members of the Panchatattva, they went in and they looted this storehouse of love of God. They just smashed it in. They broke open the seal. That's what it's saying. It's the same mood. It's like, get out of my way. I'm getting this stuff. Or take it out. There's no restriction on it. They're breaking it open and they're taking it out and indiscriminately distributing it. There's this wonderful description of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that he's Krishna himself, becomes a devotee to taste the love that the devotees have for him. Because as Krishna, he can't taste that himself because he's the object of love. And the devotees are experiencing more happiness than Krishna himself, which just doesn't seem right because he's the supreme enjoyer. So he says, I'm going to come and experience that myself. So he comes as a devotee, and from his perspective, then he's able to appreciate Krishna. Now, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is compared by one of our acharyas to be like the emperor. And the emperor can do whatever he wants. And the emperor one day becomes very intoxicated. And so he goes into the treasury and fills up a bag with all the most rare gems and heirlooms that are within the treasury, and hauls it outside, goes down on the common road, and stops people and just gives away the treasury to people who are just passing by. He doesn't even know them. So in a similar way, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is intoxicated with this love of Krishna. He doesn't even know what he's doing practically. We see that in the case of Maharaj Prataparudra. When Maharaj Prataparudra was advised by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya how to approach Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu just when he was resting after his dancing at the Rath Yatra, he came and he began reciting verses from the Gopi Gita. And Mahaprabhu said, "Oh, you're so magnificent. You've done so much for me." And he embraced him. And he in his intoxicated state, he didn't even know who he was. Before, when he saw him, he said, "King, get him away. He's a king. I don't want to see him." But then in that state, he was so intoxicated. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu becomes intoxicated and he just gives away to everybody this pure love of God without consideration. So in the Kali Yuga, practically you can't make any discrimination because otherwise you wouldn't distribute anything. Because downtown San Francisco, you actually have to stop people and pry their hand open and say, take this book, now give me a donation. All right, now eat this, now chant that, now okay, now you can go. And the next thing, punak puna, again and again, paya, causing to drink, choy mahamata, he becomes highly ecstatic by again and again drinking this. Nache kande hase gaya jaiche mata mata. Then he says, he dances, he cries, he laughs, he chants as if one is drunk. Translation, Sri Panchatattva themselves danced again and again and thus made it easier to drink nectarian love of Godhead. They danced, cried, laughed, and chanted like madmen. And in this way, they distributed love of Godhead. Purport. People generally cannot understand the actual meaning of chanting and dancing. Describing the Goswamis, Sri Srinivasa Acharya stated, Krishnod Kirtana Gana Nartana Parao. Not only did Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates demonstrate this chanting and dancing, but the 6 Goswamis also follow it in the next generation. The present Krishna consciousness movement follows the same principle, and therefore simply by chanting and dancing, we have received good responses all over the world. It is to be understood, however, that this chanting and dancing do not belong to this material world. They are actually transcendental activities, for the more one engages in chanting and dancing, the more he can taste the nectar of transcendental love of Godhead. And this is not ordinary, this dancing. Once when Prabhupada was in a conversation with Yogi Bhajan in Honolulu, Yogi was talking about how oftentimes he defended the Krishna conscious movement when he'd meet people who would say, who are these people in the streets dancing and chanting? And Yogi Bhajan was starting to explain why the devotees go out and chant. And Prabhupada interjected. He said, out of ecstasy. That they're dancing out of ecstasy. And we see when people come by and they hear the chanting, then something takes hold of them and they also want to chant and dance and be happy. And characteristically, people who have envy in their hearts, they become very much averse to this chanting. It happened at the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that when the devotees went out on the streets and started chanting, a lot of people became disturbed and called the police because they felt that it would interfere with the status quo. A lot of the Hindu priests, especially at the time, thought, if they're giving away this chanting for free and everyone's doing it, who's going to come to us and give us fees for doing all these yagyas and things like that? If this is the yagya now. So it was very disturbing to them, and they tried to stop it. They went to the Muslim magistrate and they said, can't you stop these people? They're not real Hindus, you know. They're breaking the actual statutes of Hinduism. And similarly, yesterday I saw when the devotees were chanting outside one of the stores, and the people came out and goes, this is private property. It's not private property, it's the street. But we honored it and we moved to the other side because there's plenty of room out there. But they were so disturbed that they would come out. I was once in New York, I was distributing books just outside a shop, and somebody came out and said, can you not move and distribute it? It was up the stairs. And I was just thinking, like, you can't tolerate for just a few minutes somebody standing in front of your shop. Why? Because if I was selling a hot dog or something, they wouldn't have minded. But because it was Bhagavad Gita, they were disturbed. So in the course of this chanting and dancing and distribution, you can also expect that some people will become disturbed by the process. But the devotees are full of knowledge. They're studying Bhagavad Gita, which is the most commonsensical book in the world. When you read that book and understand that you're a spirit soul, you don't die, things are changing, everything's described systematically there, you become fortified. It's not a sentimental process of chanting and dancing, but you're chanting and dancing and expressing what's the constitutional position of a living entity to be eternally happy in contact with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the next verse says, Patra patra vichar nahi, nahi sthanasthan, je jahar pai taha kari premadan. In distributing love of Godhead, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates did not consider who was a fit candidate and who was not, nor where such distribution should or should not take place. They made no conditions. Wherever they got the opportunity, the members of the Panchatattva distributed love of Godhead. Doesn't this sound familiar? in the mood of the Sankirtan devotees, once they get that fever and they start looking around, they're thinking, wherever I can give this out, I'm going to do it. And they lose all sense of boundaries and social context. They're not thinking. Like we get these pictures when SKP takes off somewhere from the airplane. He's going up and down, distributing books on the airplane and so forth. And so for the devotees, there are no more boundaries. They're simply seeing there's this material energy, the living entity within the material energy. It's a very exalted perspective. And this tone was set, this mood was set by the members of the Panchatattva, giving to everybody. Normally, the knowledge of the Vedas administered only to a certain class, not available to others. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came in Kali Yuga and said, just give it to everybody. The process is simplified. Just chant Hare Krishna. And here's the purport. There are some rascals who dare to speak against the mission of Lord Chaitanya by criticizing the Krishna consciousness movement for accepting Europeans and Americans as brahmanas and offering them sannyas. But here is an authoritative statement that in distributing love of Godhead, one should not consider whether the recipients are Europeans, Americans, Hindus, Muslims, etc. The Krishna consciousness movement should be spread wherever possible, and one should accept those who thus become Vaishnavas as being greater than Brahmanas, Hindus, or Indians. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu desired that his name be spread in each and every town and village on the surface of the globe. Therefore, when the cult of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is spread all over the world, should those who embrace it not be accepted as Vaishnavas, Brahmins, and Sannyasis? These foolish arguments are sometimes raised by envious rascals. But Krishna-conscious devotees do not care about them. We strictly follow the principles set down by the Panchatattva. Panchatattva ki! Yeah. Although the members of the Panchatattva plundered the storehouse of the love of God and ate and distributed its contents, there was no scarcity. For this wonderful storehouse is so complete that as the love is distributed, the supply increases hundreds of times. Purport: a pseudo-incarnation of Krishna once told his disciple that he had emptied himself by giving him all knowledge and was thus spiritually bankrupt. Such bluffers speak in this way to cheat the public, but actually spiritual consciousness is so perfect that the more it is distributed, the more it increases. Bankruptcy is a term that applies in the material world, but the storehouse of love of Godhead in the spiritual world can never be depleted. Krishna is providing for millions and trillions of living entities by supplying all their necessities, and even if all the innumerable living entities wanted to become Krishna conscious, there would be no scarcity of love of Godhead, nor would there be insufficiency in providing for their maintenance. Our Krishna consciousness movement was started single-handedly and no one provided for our livelihood. But at present, we are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars all over the world, and the movement is increasing more and more. Thus, there is no question of scarcity. Although jealous persons may be envious, if we stick to our principles and follow in the footsteps of the Panchatattva, this movement will go on unchecked by imitation swamis, sannyasis, religionists, philosophers, or scientists, for it is transcendental to all material considerations. Therefore, those who propagate the Krishna consciousness movement should not be afraid of such rascals and fools. Please reflect. What have you heard so far that stuck?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I think when Prabhupada mentioned that spiritual knowledge, it is never over. Typically the so-called sannyas, sadhus, especially in India, they always say this is very special thing. They have very limited thing. You are the special one. I am giving you something very special. So, kind of making it an artificial scarcity. So I think this is very clear. And Prabhupada mentioned this is not only for one person. It will, unlimited. More you distribute, more you get it. This is very profound, very profound.
Yeah, not living in the scarcity consciousness or limiting it, yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. The very first purport, right, you read, I like the subtle analogy that the purport points out where he says, Krishna is very demanding, like he says, do this, do that, right? But he's saying that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very open-hearted. He's just giving the love to everybody and he's spreading the love of God. So that was a
First you
eye-opener.
surrender and then you get, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes and interferes. People get it even without knowing it practically. The process is so merciful. Says that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave Krishna consciousness to whoever wanted it. And Nityananda Prabhu gave it to even people who didn't want it. Which is really the mood. That people say, I don't want it, but the devotee goes ahead and anyway gives it to them. And then later they realize, oh, what a favor this person has done. Thank you very much. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. I was doing book distribution in my office a few weeks back.
Good.
And there was a person who was like, I don't read these books. I don't need Bhagavatam. I don't need Krishna book. My kids will not like it. I said, okay, you can just keep Krishna book because your kids can read and there are stories. Just tell them as a story. And he was, no, it's okay. You can just keep it. You can keep it. If you don't like it, return it. And last week he came to me and said, you know what? My kids love the book. They have more books for them. I said, yes, I have some books. I'll get it for you.
Nice. So one way or another, this is the mood of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, one way or another introducing until they get a taste. Very good. That's the prerogative of the Sankirtan devotees. Manjula Kanta.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
There was a question I had that got answered as we went through. When the Lord plunders the storehouse and gives us this mercy, then I was thinking, what is this mercy? And then you explained it by saying it's chanting and dancing. And you explained the concept. But as I was reading through this, I had the realization when I was listening to what Srila Prabhupada was telling us, as the leader, as the acharya of this movement, he sits there and he writes this down. As he's writing, he says, this is the process, this is what we've been given, and he's so clear about what he's saying. And we were there yesterday, and as we were serving prasadam, there were these completely stoned people that were coming up, and there was this guy who had come up, and he couldn't even eat the food because his saliva was dripping. He's out of control, and I was immediately like, move him away from the pot. I don't want him spilling into this. And our reaction immediately is, we want to give you the prasadam, but not this close. So take a step away. And we couldn't move him because he was so stoned. And I noticed that Vaisesika Prabhu was more kind about that. He said, it's okay. He'll go at his own pace.
Who said that?
Vaisesika Prabhu.
Right.
So then, okay, because he said it, I said, okay, then that's how it is. Okay. But we were like, what is going on? Why do we work with him? And then we realized, later on, Shamalangi Mataji came back and told me, do you know that guy we were saying, he got hugged by Maharaj and he got a picture with him? And I'm like, what? It's like, that guy is going home one way or another.
He's in the photo, right?
He's in the photo. We were like, and she was like, I got pushed. He got the photo. We were laughing and laughing. And when you were reading today, I thought, I was telling her, even in the train, these are the people Srila Prabhupada started working with. We can't even work with them. Look at us. We're saying, take a step back, He had to work with them. They were stoned. They couldn't even hold themselves up. And, he used to go down and open the door to his room, and they would be lying all across the doorway, just stoned. And this person he's a Vaishnav from Vrindavan. And that's what he did to become the acharya of this movement. He was never the acharya of this movement. In his heart, he was still just serving the Lord. And that servant, being the servant, was his highest qualification. And that's why whatever he says, whatever he does, it has the effect. We give this Bhagavad Gita with the soup. We were just dumping it on them, like the plate, the soup, and the Gita, all in one. You just take it and go. And it hit me that this guy, they were spilling, and I was like, Mataji, they're not respecting the book. Why are we giving it to him? So it was a conflict for us. Just give him the prasadam and don't give the book. But others were like, just give him the book. And I realized, such an empowered soul, he's right. Even if he tore the book and one page out of it and was eating from it and looked at the words, he's going to get something. So as you just so beautifully explained, we just have to give.
Yeah.
Just have to give.
Of course, we do try to keep people from drooling in the prasadam. There's nothing wrong with that. And also when distributing books, although it says indiscriminate, we're careful that we put them with people who will appreciate it. Although, I tell people, I try to make sure they appreciate it, because I don't want to give to somebody who's going to, who doesn't like it, doesn't want it, and I push it on them anyway, and they don't like it. It cheapens the process, and they'll end up throwing it away. But I tell people, if you give a donation, then you'll be able to enter into the book. And I notice too, if they go through the austerity, it's not such a big austerity, just, give a donation. It's not a big deal. But once they do, they become attached to it. Prabhupada mentioned that. If they give their hard-earned money, then they'll think, what is in this book? What have I given my money to this rascal? Then I want to see what's in the book. However, Krishna has his ways. Yesterday, when I was in the middle of distributing a book, had the benefit of being near Srivas Pandit Prabhu for a while, and then I noticed that on top of one of the garbage containers, it wasn't in the garbage, but there was a cap on the garbage cans. There was a Bhagavad Gita sitting there. Apparently somebody had gotten one, and as they were walking along, they said, I don't want to carry this, and they put it in. And put it on top. It was leaning there. And I noticed it. I said, Srivas, can you go rescue that Bhagavad Gita? And he came back and told me that when he went over to get the Gita, there was some other person eyeing the book and just about to take it. They wanted to take that book also. And just when the books go out in different places, even sometimes people leave them. They end up being picked up. Actually, my friend, what's that? You picked up a few? Yeah. I mean, that used to, when we were in the airports, we had a very nice relationship with all the airport workers, especially the custodians, because we had a deal with them, which was we'd buy back big books for 50 cents. And, we'd sell them for $10 or $20, and then some people would leave them anyway. We never gave books away, but still people would leave them sometimes. Small percentage. But we were distributing a lot of books. And then the janitors would come and they'd pick them up and they'd bring them back at 50 cents, which was a lot, because they were getting minimum wage or whatever it was, and they could actually earn, double what they were earning during the day. So we used to think about how they were always searching for Krishna. Although they were sweeping the floors and mopping, it's like, are you just on the phone booth, or are you under the seat in the passenger lounge? And many of them became very, very close because of the distribution. One of the ways in which we used to distribute books, I did for many, many years, as I would dedicate the book to people. I would show them the book a little bit and say, here, I'll dedicate it to you. And what's your name? And they tell me the name and say, Kurt, okay, to Kurt. And then I put in my name from such and such and hand it back. And there you go. And then I'd ask for the donation. And so many times people said, why'd you sign it? Now I have to give. And I go, oh, all right. I'm sorry about that, but go ahead. And just yesterday, my friend Divyanga Prabhu called me. And there's a devotee in Alachua, Florida, where he lives, that regularly goes to second-hand shops and looks for Krishna paraphernalia, because it's all over the world now, floating around. Sometimes he finds books in there. And so he went in and he found, Radha Damodar is his name. He brought back some books and things that he found at the second-hand shop. And he said, do you want any of this? To Divyanga, because Divyanga goes out every day and distributes. So he said, help yourself. So Divyanga took out whatever books were in there, and he took them home. And as he was straightening them out, he had one book called The Teachings of Queen Kunti, which the original version had a dust cover on it. And he opened the book, and it said, to Kurt, from Will, thank you very much. And it was from St. Louis, Missouri, because it had the stamp of the temple. For further information, contact ISKCON, Lunt Street Temple, which is our temple in St. Louis back in the early 80s. So somehow that book had made a journey. I had distributed the book in the St. Louis airport, signed it to Kurt. He bought the book. He took it, I don't know where, but it ended up in a second-hand shop in Alachua and brought back, and now Divyang is keeping it in his archives. It's another one of the miracles. There's a story recently, within the last few years, about the oldest message in a bottle found. It's in the Guinness Book of World Records now. It was discovered 102 years old. It had floated in the ocean. Someone had thrown it in America, and it ended up in Scotland. It had been carried by the currents across the Atlantic Ocean for 102 years. And then a fisherman who was putting out his nets pulled it in, and he discovered the bottle, opened it up. It was verified by historians that this was a bona fide note in a bottle, 102 years old, floating in the ocean. And in a similar way, each book that you distribute is like one of those messages in a bottle. It's floating in the vast ocean of the material world, and it will pop up somewhere. We can't see the effect. Krishna knows the effect, and he knows exactly how to connect one person to another and make these books available, but it never goes in vain, ever. Every book that you distribute, every mantra that you chant has its effect eternally in the universe. We can't see it because we're tiny. We don't have the perspective, but Krishna is making it available, and that's real service, to interject that into the world, to make it available. If we don't do it, nobody will. And that's a nice service to have. Who else had their hand up? Yes. 1, 2, 3. Yes, go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I would like just to share some observations when I'm reading this sentence. Therefore, those who propagate the Krishna consciousness movement should not be afraid of such rascals and fools. Actually, yesterday on the book distributions, I was able to see some magic and some pre-work which is done by Krishna to bring those people to those places, and some wonderful stories. Like some people, they're saying that, I had some signs some few days before meeting your movement here on the street. Somebody told me you should read two pages of Bhagavad Gita every day, but they never read it. They never had this book, and so I met you today, and it was like a miracle. Another story. It was one lady. She said that she was thinking for a long time to have Bhagavad Gita. Her friends, they shared, that told her you should read it, and this is finally, she met somebody. And another story also, it was when one also young man, he said that, my friends, they were saying me that somebody from Pakistan, you should say this, and they were already prepared. I've seen with my eyes how they're coming, and people, they were looking forward for the book.
So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu makes arrangements to send these kinds of people when you go out, right? You can see that for yourself. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. This is a message from Vaikuntha Prabhu from Mysore.
Haribol!
Dandavat Guru Maharaj. How can one keep up his enthusiasm when the book's distribution does not go well? When people refuse to take books, how can you ensure that negativity does not rub on us?
Well, one way is to change your goal. Don't go out to distribute books, just go out and do the right thing. And don't have your goal that I have to distribute a certain number of books in order to be successful. If you say that by going out and trying, I'm successful, which is true, and just do the best you can under the circumstances that you're in, and you make that your objective, then you won't be disappointed. And it's a fact. If you just go out and do your best, do your level best in the situation that you're in, then Krishna will be pleased. Also, sometimes, when you go from one place to the next, you'll get, it takes a while to adjust. The population is different. The way they see things as different, and you have to find different ways to show Krishna consciousness. I know one time I used to spend for a few years, about 3 months in South India, and I wanted to study more and study Sanskrit and things like that, and I was down there. I was in what is now called, Madras is now called Chennai. I was in Chennai, but it was Madras at the time. And I was at the temple, and I said, I feel like going on Sankirtan. I got to get out the door. So I went out, and I was near the beach, and I was distributing books, and I was used to being in America distributing, and then I was stopping Indian people, and they weren't very receptive at the time. No, we have this. We know everything. I was like, you know everything. Well, what am I going to do about that? And then there's a U.S. military man who was in the Navy, because there's a port there. He walked by, and I stopped him, and I showed him a book and everything like that. And he got real enthusiastic, and he gave a donation. And I think he gave $20 or something like that, which was about 100 times more than anybody had given me all day. And I went back to the ashram and said, that's it, I'm going back. Anyway, you have to find where your niche is and do the best you can within your niche. There's always a way to find the ways and means in the certain place. It doesn't always translate what you're doing in one place, goes to the next place. You have to innovate. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu felt the same way when he went up to Varanasi. And he was saying, I brought this valuable, these gems to distribute, but nobody wants them. He said, I may have to end up giving them away free here. He went from some places where people were just taking it like anything, like in South India, and then he went to Varanasi, and people was like, no thanks, Om Tat Sat, we're not interested. And you could see Mahaprabhu was frustrated also. He said, what am I going to do? I may have to give it away free here. Even free they may not take. So each place that one goes, one has to, assess the situation and do the best one can. And don't compare it to the last place you were. You can't compare walking around Silicon Valley distributing to going to Mysore and doing it there. Do the best you can there. People also need help in the way that they need it. What else? Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So my Prabhu and I, we were distributing together. So we met a Buddhist man. So we started explaining him the philosophy, and he said, yeah, he knows something about karma because he has a Hindu friend. So he was reluctant to take a book, but we just suggested him, maybe you can, you have a friend who knows about karma, so you can gift it to him. So he agreed, and he gave a very nice donation as well.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, he took the book and...
Very nice.
Yeah.
Oftentimes this is the case, and Prabhupada even mentions it in a purport, that sometimes the book goes to a friend or somebody else. Actually, it's in a letter. But Prabhupada said that sometimes the person who's receiving the book will not be very receptive, but they'll pass to the next one. There's a story about a devotee going door to door. I think it's in Australia. And the person answered the door and was on the phone at the same time. And, let me see if I get this right. The person answered the door, said, I'm not interested. But the devotee heard that there was somebody upstairs and said, well, can you ask the person upstairs if they're interested? And said, no, they're busy. And he said, no, just ask them. Ask them if they want a Bhagavad Gita. So the person, all right. And they went up there and said, there's a guy at the door. He's got Bhagavad Gita. Are you interested? He goes, got what? Bhagavad Gita? No, I'm not interested. But that person was on the phone. And then the person on the other line said, what are they selling? He said, Bhagavad Gita. And he said, I want a Bhagavad Gita. Ask him what kind of Bhagavad Gita it is. And he said, what kind of Bhagavad Gita? So he started explaining this conversation was going on. And then the person upstairs on the phone said, get it, I'll pay you back. So the person said, okay, we'll take the Gita. And so oftentimes, you find that that there's some carry through. I know the first Back to Godhead magazine I got from Richie Corsa, my Vartmana Pradakshaka guru, was not meant for him. He brought it to me, said, I don't like this stuff, but I know you're into something like this, so you take it. And it's like, wow, that saved my life. It went from one person to the next. So I always have that in my mind when people take it away, and especially when they mention it for somebody else. It probably is. So it's very good what you did.
My Prabhu actually suggested him, you first read and then pass it on. So he was actually trying to give him another one, but he said, I'll keep one. But he told him, first read, please, and then pass
Very
it
good.
on.
Always selling bunches like bananas. Okay. Yes. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Yesterday was an incredible experience. We came across all kinds of people, as everyone was saying, from South Asia to Saudi Arabia who accepted books. What I found was, one thing what I got out of that was, there are these naysayers, and as Vaikuntha Nayak Prabhu was asking, it is a bit demoralizing, but then right when that happens, you meet someone who's so very appreciative, and just that one appreciation, it just does way for all others who you have met. So there was this one gentleman who, I think he was probably from either Thailand or somewhere around that Asian country, and he said, you guys are doing a great job. Keep it up, keep it up. It's really great what you're doing. And he, of course, he had accepted a book. I saw the book in his hand, so I went and I thanked him, and he thanked me back, saying that, you guys are doing a great job. And on the same note, for others, when we were asking for donation, some people did not understand the meaning, why we are asking for donation. And I had to explain them why, how you get connected. But then there were others who, without even asking, were, taking out money and giving out, said, no, we know, in fact, we want to give more, but this is all we have to give. And this whole experience is just wonderful, how you meet all kinds of people, and even with that donation. So it was absolutely amazing. Thank you.
Very nice observations. And as far as naysayers go, there couldn't be anyone, I think, yesterday in that arena who would be labeled more of a naysayer than our friends, the Christian preachers. Our allies, who stand up literally on a soapbox and insult as many people as possible. This is their means of teaching about spirituality, apparently. But as I was walking by, I came from my spot up the street in that Grand Canyon-like area, and I came down to the corner and I saw that SKP and Malini were there in that opening that opens up into that wild area where people, dance and you do all kinds of crazy stuff to make some money and a little scene. And there they were distributing, and I had to walk by the Christian man. And as I heard him, he was picking out people in the crowd and insulting them. He was saying, "You people are disgusting. Look at you. You think you're so sophisticated. You're nothing. You're disgusting people, despicable even." And just like that's their mode, really. They're going on and on like that. And also, when I came over and I said to Malini and SKP, I said, "Wow, that's a really unique way to preach, isn't it?" And they they sort of laughed and they said, "No, that's not the half of it." They said, "They're going on and on about Krishna." They say, "This Hare Krishna chanting, this is nothing. And these Hare Krishna books, don't read the Hare Krishna books. And don't talk to the Hare Krishna people." And throughout the Bhagavatam, this is explained. We're in the same pastime here. Gadadhar Das went to the house of the Qazi, and he charged in there. And he said, you have to chant Hare Krishna, or I'll kill you all. And the Qazi came running out, and he said, "Tomorrow I'll chant Hare Krishna." And Gadadhar Das said, "Why tomorrow? You just did it. Haribo!" And he walked out. So devotees are always eager for people to say Hare Krishna. And not only that, And we've experienced this up at Lytton Plaza as well. Malini SKP affirmed that many people who were walking by who were insulted by these people came over to the devotees and said, "You're not with them, right?" And they said, "No." And they said, "We'll buy a book. Whatever it is, we'll take it." We hate them so much that we're just out of spite, we're going to buy a book. So it's a Yam Kroda Kama Sahaja Pranayari Piti Vatsalya Moha Guru Gaurava Sevya Bhave. The Brahma Samhita says, whether out of fear, anger, spite, whatever it is, somehow or other, if you take to Krishna consciousness. So it's like those people are herding them over to us. And that used to happen up at the Stanford Plaza also, all the time when those people were demonstrating and screaming at us and everything like that, that people would come over and specifically they would buy a book just to show that they were against the other people. So there's so many dynamics working when we're out doing this service, and one learns to sort of appreciate how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is manipulating all the energies just so the living entities can take these books. Yes?
Maharaj, yesterday, we tend to sometimes discriminate whom to give the book, but yesterday I was when watching, we should approach anybody and everybody. So I approached a street wagger who was on the corner and started just talking to how your day, not simply giving him the book. He said, "I'm looking for something really good to read." I was just like, and he was not intoxicated at all, but he was just, I said, "Would you really like to eat?" He said, "But I don't have anything to give." I said, "That's okay, if you really wanted to read." And I was, when all the discussion which happened, like how we discriminate, we were thinking in the morning, whether we should give or not, rather than looking at whether this person is, he's going to give a donation or not, or, what race or background he is. Just giving him the book, he was really happy. You could see the happiness on his face. He said, "I'm looking for something really high stuff. I don't want to read something, low-level stuff." I'm just like, how is it possible a person on the street, when everybody is materially motivated here, everybody is walking on the street for this, material rush which is in, and this person on the street begging may not have anything, and he's looking to read something higher self. That was something. Then I really thanks Prabhupada that, we are here to pass on the knowledge to him.
Well, another observation of that is that the living entity is Sakchidananda. That's the nature, because we're part and parcel of Krishna. And that chit potency means that the jiva is always looking for some knowledge. And you'll notice people on buses, trains, even while they're driving their car, they're trying to ingest some knowledge. They're reading something. This is the tendency of living entities to take in chit knowledge. They want it. On airplane, you look, everyone's reading a newspaper, looking at something. That's the nature. And living entities, when they get a little purified, they can appreciate this very intricate knowledge. And even if they can't at first, when they start reading it, it will register. Anavriti Shabdat, Anavriti Shabdat. The Vedanta Sutra says, this kind of chit, this transcendental knowledge, which is, as indicated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's a gift coming from the spiritual world. It really has what they're looking for, and it will uncover them. Maya Mukta Jiva Nahi Swata Krishna Gyan. Automatically, people don't become uncovered. It doesn't just happen by chance. It happens by intervention. And what is the intervention? That Srila Vyasadeva has compiled the Srimad Bhagavatam specifically to intervene in the lives of the people in Kali Yuga and give them an opportunity to go back to Godhead. In Kali Yuga, that's where we're at. We're just starting, actually, believe it or not. And the Srimad Bhagavatam specifically manifests for this age. Anarto pasanam sakshad bhakti yoga madhoksajay. Lokasya ajanato vidvams chakre sattvata samhitam. Specifically for this age, this book has become manifested to give people the opportunity. So it's no doubt, no wonder that with all of that, that when little jiva takes a look, that he'll become attracted and interested. Sooner or later, maybe not sooner because the intoxication has to wear off a little bit. and then the effects of coming in contact will take place. But it makes a difference that we're going out and showing it, because the tatastha, jiva means tatastha, which means marginal, also means open to suggestion. That's what tatastha means. Living entity is open to suggestion. And that's why everyone's suggesting something to the little jiva. It's going, come over here. Let me show you what I got. You walk up and down San Francisco streets, everyone's saying, we got the best thing in here. The best whatever it is. Come and jiva, have a look. And they put up signs, because little jiva's walking around. His consciousness connects with it. He's open to suggestion because he's tatastha. And he goes, okay, I'll take it. But intervention means we go out and say, jiva, over here. Before you go anywhere else, take a look at this. Take it with you. No, take a look. A little more over here. And then it catches on. The jiva goes, okay, you suggested it, I'll take it. And they cross over a line where they say, okay, I wasn't interested, now I'm interested, I'll take it. Because he's tatastha. So we have to take it out. That's our mission. We have to take it out, we have to show it, we have to suggest. We have to talk in their ear and say, no, I suggest you take this. I'm not interested, I know everything. No, but this is different. I suggest you take this. I know you know everything. I can tell by looking at you. You're the smartest person who ever lived. And if there were more people like you in the world would be a better place to live. And I really like the way you put things. And that's why I think you'll appreciate this more than anybody else on the planet. And then whatever way, the doctor has to say, the patient is delirious, and I don't need any medicine right now, doctor. And the doctor's saying, I know you don't, and you know what, this isn't even medicine. What this is candy. You like candy? I like candy. He's like, okay, open your mouth for a second. And in the distribution of Krishna consciousness, people are like, I don't need Krishna, I don't even like Krishna, I like marijuana instead. And then, it's like that's you know where marijuana comes from? Krishna's the seed of all existences, and this is like the real thing. And then it's really, and then next thing they wake up at home and they're like, how did you get this book, honey? I was like, I don't know, I was just walking along. So this is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. It's Kali Yuga. All bets are off. There's no holds barred in this age. We've got what we've got. We've got the Bhagavatam, we got the holy name, and we got Prasadam. And you just go out and do it. And you're in the pastime. You're right in there with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And by this activity, simple thing, take the simple thing and apply it very carefully to your own life. And then go out and give it to as many people as you can, and your life will be successful by the power of the disciplic succession coming from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Go Premanande Haribo! Vancha Kalpaturubhishya Kripasnabhe Vichapatitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Now we're going to have Guru Puja. So we'll put away all of the asanas and the carpet, and we'll stand up and have the singing and dancing. And we thank everyone for joining us online. You can stay tuned. There'll still be a little bit more. Thank you. Hare Krishna.